now is probably the best time to start a company where there's so much action, there's so much happening, and it's super exciting to be in this space. It's also a great time to not have like revenue pressure on your shoulders and just think out loud, have open conversations, and just be free before you really choose an area and then dive into it. I think the same types of pressures will come back as you start a company, but now is a great time to just help with transition, make sure the team is good, but at the same time, start thinking about the types of problems I want to solve in the future.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast, where every week we hear an amazing story from a serious founder who built a valuable software company and did it without big VC funding. I'm your host, Greg Head, and today my guest is Shailesh Hegde, the former CEO, recently sold the company of Hubilo. He's based in Bangalore, India, and it's a crazy adventure. Hubilo got started in India in the video streaming and market, and then COVID happened. The founders raced to create the virtual online platform that would replace the trade shows and events that everybody was racing into. They raised a ton of VC funding, and then that market didn't materialize. It kind of dried up. They returned the money and restarted it with Shailesh in charge. So this is a story of a refounder moving from overfunded to practical, bootstrapped again. He recently sold the company. It's proven you can get through a lot of stuff, and if you focus on the right things, which Shailesh did. So it's a great story on the Practical Founders Podcast. Hi, Shailesh. How are you this evening in India? It's morning here in Dallas.
Morning, Greg. I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. It's all good. You might hear a little bit of traffic in the background, but otherwise, everything's good. Weather's great.
Well, yeah. And where are you exactly in India? Big place.
I'm in Bangalore at the moment.
Okay. Are you downtown, I guess, or, in the center of
I'm
things,
in
or a
the
little ways out?
south part of Bangalore.
Okay.
Usually the downtown has like offices and stuff. But yeah, most people live on the outskirts of the city, so to speak.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And, Bangalore is a huge tech center, software center. Is that where you're from and, where you've spent most of your career in software?
Yeah, most of my career has been here. I didn't grow up here. I grew up in a few different cities in India. And but Bangalore has always been, since my college days, I've been here, spent a few years in the US in between, but half of my life has been in Bangalore.
Okay. Well, it's like people move into Silicon Valley and playing that game there. So great to have you on the podcast. We spent some time together this summer. You reached out and said, I'm doing this crazy thing here and I'm pretty practical and I'm listening to your podcast. Can you help as a strategic advisor, which I do for half a dozen CEOs at any time. I've been doing that for almost 20 years. And now I have the Practical Founder peer groups there, but I helped you when you were in this crazy transition here. So it's a really incredible story. And you just had a big event recently here. So let's just start with, what is Hubilo and who is it for?
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed our conversations when we did have them. And Hubilo is essentially a webinar platform meant for B2B marketing teams specifically. And the reason why we built the product was because webinars usually were just seen as, okay, you get a bunch of people together and you run it and you're done. But we had a different perspective on it. We felt that it's a great engine to generate leads pipeline. And we wanted to build something different in a way that outcomes could be better. So we started with focusing on the mid-market segment, companies between 50 to 500 people, growth stage companies that really wanted to kick off a media engine, and webinars were a big role over there. So that was kind of the gist of it.
Right. And you were selling to leaders in the marketing department who were scrambling to get B2B leads for their sales teams and all of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
How much of it was enterprise? There's an enterprise webinar world. There's the webinar world that, small businesses use and solopreneurs and influencers use. How much of your business was selling to large company and enterprise, which is different than the mid-market?
Yeah. I think we made a conscious decision not to go after the very large enterprises because at the time when we made this pivot towards building a webinar product, I think getting revenue quicker and more frequently was more important. And as
Yeah.
we all know, the enterprise sales cycles tend to be many, many months long, and we just
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to make that work. So we
Your
didn't.
cash flow couldn't support those kinda crazy deals
ab-
and
Absolutely.
and y little
So we made
tiny
a
company.
conscious.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we made a conscious decision to just focus on companies which are within 500 employees. And we definitely saw large enterprises come purchase our products and use our products in the earlier stage of the company when virtual
Yeah.
events really took off.
Yeah.
Everyone wanted that product. But then after certain shifts, we moved over to a webinar product. While we were competing with some of the larger incumbents, I think we saw faster success with in the middle path
Yeah.
somewhere. Yeah.
Right, that was part of our discussion there, but and you mentioned there was a previous version and a pivot and let's say a restart and
Yeah.
a turnaround, if you will, in, this crazy game of webinars and post-COVID. We'll talk about that. How
Yeah.
big did, Hubilo get this year?
Yeah. I mean, when we made the pivot somewhere a couple of years ago, we obviously had to make like a bunch of changes and so on. So we were around 30 people in the company and making about a couple of million in revenue. And that's where we were towards the end as well.
Okay. And you recently sold the company. Is that right? Here last month, something like that? And you led that through. Tell us about the acquirer, and we'll go into as much detail as you could provide about
Yeah.
that. But what happened with what's the story with the acquisition?
Yeah, sure. It all wrapped up like a couple of months ago, and
Okay.
we found a strategic buyer, a competitor in the space, if you will. But their focus and their product lines were very complementary to what we were doing. They're focused on the larger enterprise segment, and I mentioned we were in the mid market area. We had built a set of features and products that they felt would have been good for them to sell to the enterprise customer without having to rebuild stuff. So
Yeah.
for them, it was really a buy versus build decision.
Yeah.
For us, it was finding ourselves or finding folks a good home where
Yeah.
they could go on and continue to have good careers. So it all worked out that way. And we also wanted to find a partner, a buyer who would look at the talent in the folks that we have, and also find ways to maximize the product work that has been done over the last few years.
Yeah.
And when we found that, I thought it was a great kind of match. And the company is BrandLive, based out of Portland, Oregon. It's been around for many, many years. I think they've had their own journey of pivots and movements. But they're doing really well now, and it was like a nice match for us as well.
Okay, so BrandLive is in the video streaming for big
Hmm.
companies, helping big companies do all kinds of video things, town
Yeah,
hall meetings and all that stuff, right? Everybody's gone video, everybody's gone streaming, and they're focused on the enterprise here. And they have a suite of products. And
yeah.
I guess, you'd call this, and I think they're private equity owned these days. They're not
Hmm.
huge, but they're private equity owned and they're, filling out their portfolio and they
Yeah,
acquired you tuck in kind of acquisition, right?
yeah.
To add to their core suite and expand and so forth. Is that what it sounds like to, is that
Yeah.
actually what happened?
Yeah, yeah, you've probably seen that multiple times over, and yeah,
Yeah.
they're finding ways to grow. I think they have a sweet spot in the large enterprise segment in the U.S., and they're finding other ways, inorganic ways to add revenue, add people as necessary, and just build a suite of products because the market is pretty huge. There's lots of large
Yeah.
enterprise players in
Yeah.
not just video streaming, but video storage, video hosting, and video's been crazy in the last decade, right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
still a lot of demand. And with the large enterprise, you can command a large ACV, and once you have that, a lot of things get taken care of. So I think it's a good spot to be in.
That's great. Well, you say, I want to grow my team. I want this product and everything we've done to, make the most impact in the world. One of those ways is to find a better home inside a bigger company, right? Something like that. So it
Yeah.
helps the vision there. What's your status? You probably are helping with the transition, but are you running the group and do you anticipate doing that for a while? I've done that a couple times, right? I was the guy that led it into, the big company and stayed around
Yeah.
long enough to get it installed. What's your role these days?
Yeah, so I am in a transitional role, you could say that,
Yeah.
where I'm helping the team get integrated well into BrandLive. Culturally, the teams are different. You got to figure out
Uh-huh.
ways to work well with a new team, and all that's going good. On the other hand, we also want to we figured out a product strategy in how we are going to go to the market together.
Right.
What features are we going to pick and integrate into BrandLive's product suite? What products are we going to kind of reimagine for BrandLive's
Mm.
customers? So a lot of
Right.
that planning and execution is where I've been spending my time. And of course, we want to ensure that Hubilo's existing customers continue to get great products, great service, and they don't feel distant from us. So we've got to make sure that that happens over the next several months. So yeah, my hands are full with the transition piece and just making sure both sides are happy with this union, and
Yeah.
one plus one becomes more than two
Right.
in the near future. So
Great.
that's what I'm focused on, and then we'll see as things chug along,
Yeah.
how things materialize for me, and where I can add more value.
Excellent. Well, well spoken, right? You've been, you were on the team in the early days and then the big change, and then you led the whole company, and now you're leading it through this kind of thing. So, yeah, there's a lot of moving parts in there. You're a small company. And BrandLive isn't a massive company, isn't a billion-dollar company, but
Hmm.
it's bigger. What is the expectation for this? They acquired a, pretty young company here, a product line and so forth. Are they going to do a hard integration, mean rebrand the product, put it in the suite, re-interface it, make it all consistent, make it really part of the family? It's not going to stand alone and hang out there a
Yeah.
long time like we see when big
Yeah.
companies acquire other big companies.
Yeah. We're actively working on that. We're actively working on
Okay.
rebranding and building additional features to make them enterprise friendly into
Yeah.
our own products, and really rebrand them to look like the BrandLive
Yes.
platform.
Okay.
And that, of course, comes with like a lot of development work, syncing with the backend, and a bunch of technical stuff. At the same time, setting customer expectations that hey, nothing's really going away in terms of functionality. You're
Yeah.
still going to
Uh-huh.
get Hubilo's things that you are used to over the last few years, but even better, you're going to get BrandLive's additional support, enterprise mechanism of serving
Yeah.
customers. So yeah, we're just trying to make best of whatever we have, and what we'll get once we integrate the products into BrandLive. Everything looks
Yeah.
seamless and consistent, and both sets of customers are happy. Yeah, that's what we are
Okay.
aiming for.
Okay. Well, I think there's a little bit of advantage. I've always had bigger companies, our companies, at 100 million in revenue to bigger, software companies. And then we had a lot of conflict about bringing it into their system, staying independent, because we had so many customers and so many
Yeah.
employees and so much
Mhm.
culture. And the old joke is, what do you get when you cross Hubilo and BrandLive, the acquiree and the acquirer, right? And you get BrandLive, right? In the long run. When Oracle buys somebody, what do you get when you get this? And Oracle, you get Oracle, right? In the long run, they're buying you and they're gonna put you in the right place for the long term,
Yeah.
return on their big investment there. So,
Mhm.
when we talked in summer, you were hoping for something like this, right? You were
Mhm.
trying to get it to the other side. So, Congratulations. Are you feeling a little relief here that, you have a little support from the big companies? You've got through the transaction. Are you relieved yet? Or, it's
Yeah,
pretty
yes.
stressful for you. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, it is a relief where when you set out a specific goal, and we knew that that's the goal for us. The team knew it. I was pretty transparent with them when I took over as the CEO. And once you achieve that goal, it is obviously nice to see that. And also getting an exit, there's luck involved. There's lots of companies out there who's probably in a spot where they want to exit, but perhaps they can't due to lots of factors. So there's a lot of gratitude that, okay, things worked out. There's still a few things to kind of chalk out of the next few months,
Yeah.
but then we kind of achieved what we set out to achieve, and now the next phase comes up. So it was
Okay.
an interesting experience just going through that. A lot of learning, a lot of good conversations
Let
that
founders out there saying, interesting experience, which means a brutal year, right? It was an adventure for you, I
yeah.
know. So, we'll talk about that here.
Yeah.
How many employees in BrandLive, the acquiring company, these days?
Yeah, I think it's less than 200, like between
Okay.
170 to
Yeah.
200. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So you're a smaller fish, but they're not a huge fish. It's
yeah,
that. But you started your career working for very big companies, technical roles for big US companies, right? Based in Bangalore there, that classic, we'll hire plenty of people in India to get some technology built and so forth. But,
yeah.
does it seem at all like, your early career working at bigger companies, or is still this seems like a startup still that's,
Oh, yeah.
pretty, small?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's still at that medium stage, I would say, at the moment. Yeah, larger companies like Cisco, I mean, those were massive when I worked, and also at Siemens, Nokia, all of these companies. Yeah, the
Okay.
pace is different, the culture is different. I think I favored the small to
Yes.
medium sized companies
Yes.
towards the second half of my career, and that's what keeps me more excited.
So this is, I'm gonna call you a refounder. I heard that from a founder who's gonna be on the podcast. He was a leader in the company, and, yeah, the company got all messed up, the founder got all messed up, and he took over, and the thing is going crazy. They reset a lot of things, and, it was kind of a restart, turnaround, so you're a refounder, and you did a turnaround here. But you didn't start saying, "I'm an entrepreneur." You spent, part of your career is a technical leader, then a product leader. Would you briefly tell us about your early career here? Because this is a journey from inside the business and inside the technology side, product side, to running the business.
Yeah, I mean, early on, I started off as a QA engineer because I was no good coding, to be very honest. And I just found something that I was good at. I guess I understood systems more than
Yeah.
actually writing code. And somewhere I feel that that helps you as you grow. And then it was only many years later when I came across the product management role, I got super excited.
Yeah.
And then I attended like an intro session on what it is to be a PM here in Bangalore. This was, I'd completed my stint in the US and I'd already moved back home. And
Uh-huh.
then I went to this intro session of, okay, here's product management. And that really, caught my interest, and I felt that, okay, I'm probably not going to be excited about being in the QA role for like a very long time. It's a perfectly fine job, but I just felt it was not for me. And I always wanted something broader. I think I always had the itch to do something more broader in that sense.
Yeah.
And luckily, there was an opening, or I mean, I had very supportive management at Blue Jeans who said, okay,
Mhm.
we're going to take a bet on you. Let us make you the
Yeah.
first PM in Bangalore. And our product organization was based out of the Bay Area and Blue
Mhm.
Jeans. And that was really my first tryst with the PM role. And I really
Mhm.
started taking a liking to it. And once you do that, you work hard, you collaborate with people. I started owning more things. And then Blue Jeans got acquired by Verizon in 2020. I had by then I had spent about 6 years
Ah,
in the system. And I think I was like a well-rounded product manager or a leader at that point.
uh-huh.
And then I felt, okay, now I need a different type of challenge. So let's just dive straight into a pre-Series A company, and
Yeah.
which is going to be chaotic, but it was also like a big hockey stick kind of growth phase for Hubilo at that time.
It was kind of a
And
boom time in
yeah,
Bangalore,
absolutely.
right? Funding
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
excitement and, it's kind of the phases. Let's get some technical team in India.
yeah,
Wait a minute, they can run things there. Wait a minute, they can start things there.
yeah,
And, now, of course, it's a massive,
yeah,
ecosystem with
yeah.
everything that Silicon Valley has and more. But, you kinda came up through those ranks, there and went to the startup side. Was Hubilo your first startup there,
You could say that
or
Blue Jeans was my first startup. In fact,
I
I would
see,
say
okay.
going back to 2009, this was just after the financial crisis in the
Yeah.
US, and I graduated just after that. That was my first startup, a company called Starent Networks, which was acquired by Cisco a few
Oh,
months after I joined. So that's how I became part of Cisco. And then I spent a few years there. Blue Jeans was a Series E company when I joined.
mm.
That's what I remember. So not really a startup, but just in terms of employee count, it was not like a
So
big number.
Series E means they were VC funded, Series
Yeah,
A, B, C, D, E, right?
yeah,
With lots
yeah,
of you
absolutely.
didn't make any money off of that, but you saw there's an adventure out there, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, it was obviously not like a massive exit, but
yeah,
it was fine. It gave me that experience of moving from a very large company like Cisco to a 200 headcount company like Blue
yeah,
Jeans. So it was still like a
right,
massive shift in mindset for me. And then of course
yeah,
Hubilo came along very very early stage, and then you got to see a very different journey. Of course, the
yeah,
market pull was a massive factor, but then you still got to execute really hard because there's
yeah.
competition everywhere when there's market pull.
And you started out in a product role at Hubilo 1.0, right? The first
Yeah.
version there, something like that. Okay,
Hmm.
so let's talk about what was, you took over in, let's say, Hubilo 2.0, a restart, turnaround
Hmm.
after a boom and a bust, with COVID and post COVID in this crazy space of virtual events. People weren't going to trade shows.
Mm.
The hope was everybody was going to do these virtual events. Didn't really materialize like that. So kind
Yeah.
of unrolled. But tell us about Hubilo. Who were the founders and, what were they thinking and how was it funded?
Yeah, absolutely. Hubilo was founded by two folks, Vaibhav Jain and Mayank Agarwal. They were college classmates, and I think they both had dreams of starting their own company. They were running Hubilo pre-COVID, and it was focused on like a different use case. But the moment COVID hit, I think they saw a great opportunity, and credit to them in that they grabbed it with both hands
Yes,
and
they were.
more, and they
And what was
built
that
a
opportunity specifically that happened during
yeah,
COVID that
yeah.
they
I mean,
recognized?
yeah, absolutely. They saw that all physical events just went away the moment COVID hit across the globe, and then they saw an opportunity for building a virtual equivalent because that's what their customers were asking for. They kind of got a scent of that, and they quickly, I think, strapped together a product. I don't think it was the best in terms of UI UX because they just didn't have the time to do it, but they scrapped something together, and just true entrepreneurial spirit. They started selling that. They were working, I think, days and nights just to keep things
Yeah,
up. It was like
yeah.
crazy hustle. And then the early funding happened. That's when they were able to hire a team. And yeah, the early funding came through VC. I guess VC saw that opportunity as well. You had companies like Hopin getting
Yes.
funded around the time, and a bunch of others. And Hubilo was like a pretty strong contender in that time frame. And I think towards the end of 2020 is when I started having conversations with Hubilo, and they were looking for a head of product, and that's how that happened.
How much venture funding did they raise? Hopin, which was a hot, then not startup during COVID for virtual events, virtual trade shows, people walking around on screen and talking to each other. They raised a ton of money, and
Yeah.
I don't know where they are these days. They're mostly gone. But like, how much money did the Hubilo founders raise once they were onto this opportunity?
Yeah, I think in multiple rounds put together, it was about 150 million.
150 million in India. This was like, that's
Yeah.
like, holy cow, let's go crazy here. So, and you obviously didn't have 150 million to play with or what was left over there, but what happened? Did it work?
Yeah, it worked until it didn't, in the sense that the market really took us along, and we saw a sudden dip in demand as COVID kind of subsided. I suppose at the back of our minds, we knew a change like that is going to happen. Like, things are going to get better in terms of COVID subsiding, but the bet was that the change, which was physical to virtual, would somewhat remain
Mm,
permanent. And I think we've
yeah.
we've seen bunch of companies, including the Zooms of the world, the meeting providers, also seeing a big boom and then kind of a stagnation or
Yes.
maybe a dip
Right.
even. But the events piece was even more extreme. And I think
Up and down.
that's, yeah, those were not good days, or those were nerve-wracking days about, okay, now what? Now what are we going to
Yeah.
do? Weber and I used to have like lots of discussions around it, and then I mean, the nice thing about having like a close knit team is that you keep at it, you figure out ways to come out of those situations, and that's what we did. We thought of different pivots. We experimented a bit. We put together a smaller team in place just to figure out, okay, let's keep our existing business as is. There was still, I mean, the virtual events were still there, but we could see the indications of revenue going away. So we had to figure out new ways, and we probably had about 6 months to do that.
So how long was the virtual events game, like was that like a year and then you realized the change was happening and you had to move quickly or?
Yeah, I think it was a couple of years. I would say
Oh,
18
okay.
to 24 months. So it
Yeah.
wasn't very short lived. But 6 months before that, I think you could get a sense of, okay, recurring revenue is not really happening. People
Yes.
are consciously making a decision. And if you remember, in that, there was a sudden movement towards in person with a vigor as COVID
Yeah.
subsided, right? And
Yeah.
then things kind of settled down. And then people said, okay, let's do a bit of both. Let's do physical and let's do virtual. And that's where we noticed the opportunity with webinars, because they tended to
Mhm.
be shorter, more frequent pieces of content that people are
Yeah.
trying to create. And that's the opportunity that we saw.
Okay, but you didn't have $150 million and the two founders, there was a big shift in the company. What happened there? You guys, let's say, recapitalized or the funding left the building. You were kind of break even with a little bit of burn, this year. What happened to that 150 million? Some of it got spent. What happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of it did get spent, and I think we came to a point where we felt, or the founders, I mean, kudos to the founders on this one. They felt that they wouldn't be able to give the investors a good return on these
Right.
funds, and at that point, I think they had two choices. One is to just go as normal, like you just keep going,
Spend. Yeah, see what happens.
and see what happens. But I think they made the bold and, in hindsight, wise move of deciding to return the rest of the capital, because we still had revenue. Yes,
Yeah.
the virtual events side of revenue was going down sharply, but there was revenue, and we knew that if the webinar product saw PMF and we were able to grow that, then we could still survive. We could still make something out of the company.
Okay.
And that's when they started a rather long process of figuring out how to give back the money, which
Yes.
turns out
Yeah.
it's not that simple. But but
Yeah.
they got that done, right? And
Well, a lot of
yeah,
investors really appreciate that. Here's
mhm,
a big bet.
yeah,
Oh, the bet's not working. If it's a couple million, I just had Natalie Barbu on the podcast. She had a little $1 million funding. They got down to 35K, and the funder said, and then with no revenue, just use it all, see what you can come up with. And now they're growing. They're up at 3 million
yeah.
in a year. They repivoted and did a bunch of things. But when you raise 150 million and you're spending through it, you can't move that fast through it. You know, VCs kind of appreciate when you say this bet isn't going to work. Here's your money back. Go bet it on something else, right?
Yeah.
I've seen that a few times out there. Did you effectively go from a big overfunded company, right? Drunken funding, as I say, to, like the dot-com era
Yeah.
funding and, the COVID era funding to like a bootstrap small team, right? With a little revenue. Did you
The-
have any
Yeah.
funding in your business? Or yeah,
Yeah, we did do that. We went from this massively funded company to a bootstrapish company because there was
yeah.
still some revenue. I mean, I had something to work with. There was a baseline that I could use. But yeah, the challenge, it was still a pretty uphill task because as all of this is happening, I mean, you still have a team who's been with you for multiple years, and you
Right.
want to make sure that their morale is high, and you have to figure out incentives for them to stay on
Yeah.
with you. And yeah, I mean, apart from that, of course, you got to go figure out what to build, what's the to get a PMF again, the 0 to 1 journey in a crowded
It's a startup,
webinar
a
market.
restartup. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
restart up. So you got to do all of that again. And for me, it was like a great opportunity
Yeah.
to just experience almost being, like you said, a
Yeah, the
refounder
founders left the
in that.
building too. The funders left, the founders left, and still owning piece of the business. And they said, Shailesh, why don't you take this and see how far you can go?
Yeah, yeah, correct.
Some version of that. Okay. Was there a clear expectation like that was maybe impractical, or was it pretty practical? Like, we'd lost the first bet, whatever we can get here would be great. What were the expectations on you and when you took over as a CEO, the refounder?
Yeah, yeah. The expectations were pretty clear, and that was something that was discussed with me, so that I need to kind of fully buy into what that looks like. And I thought it was fairly practical. It
Yeah.
was down to execution, really. And I still believe that even if it's a tough market, if you execute really well across product and GTM, I mean, good things can happen. So I had to think about how do I want to structure the team? What are the products that we are focused on? What is the kind of early customer feedback that we are getting? Where do we double down? Where do we kind of go back? Look at expenses in a whole different way. Like, I was introduced to
Yeah.
the world of finance in a much deeper way than I'd ever been exposed to. But ultimately, I mean, to me, it was the fundamentals. Like, look at your expenses, cut all the stuff that's absolutely not required over the next 24 months, and then just keep experimenting, keep doing small stuff with the end goal, which is what I had told the team, that hey, look, we are actually going to look for an exit at the right time, but we got to get to zero burn as quickly as possible,
Yeah.
and we need to increase our ARR, and we need to show proof points that okay, this product is working, right? And once that
Right.
was transparently made clear to everybody, I guess, okay, you got alignment. You obviously got lots of hard questions about why are we doing this, and all of that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
once that was through, the goal was okay, this is what we're going to do.
This podcast is brought to you by my friends at Fraction. Are you stuck at your 7-figure ARR with tech challenges holding you back? Whether it's tech debt, slow feature delivery, or other scaling challenges, you're not alone. Every founder hits this wall. That's where Fraction comes in. Fraction gives you access to senior US-based engineers and CTOs without full-time costs or hiring risks. Fraction founder Praveen Ganta is a practical founder himself who has been on this podcast. He grew his bootstrapped SaaS business, Hidden Levers, with fractional talent and sold it for more than $100 million. Fraction's experts come in to fix problems and do real work, not just give advice. Fraction is flexible and founder-friendly. Get 10 to 30 hours per week from vetted and experienced US-based talent. And you could start with 1 week risk-free trial to test it out. Find your next fractional senior engineer or CTO at fraction.work. Now back to our podcast. Yeah. So I just wrote a post about this on LinkedIn. It's an age-old concept. My version of it is there's usually two kinds of revenue in any company. There's the survival revenue, that is maybe your legacy revenue or not product market fit revenue or not really profitable. It's painful and
Yeah.
everything, but it kind of funds your ability to go find and grow the scale revenue, right? So not every company has perfect revenue that's, ICP, product market fit,
Yeah.
really good. We, as entrepreneurs and bootstrappers, know that customers fund us. And in order to find all that, we got to go make stuff up. But you had some revenue from your virtual events that was, let's say, slowly rolling out, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
your job was to go get this webinars business up and moving and then overtake this, right? And,
Yeah.
the new scale revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. The good thing was we had a head start. I guess
Yeah.
one of the advantages was that a webinar product ultimately is a much more stripped down version of a virtual events product.
It's a
So
feature of
we
a
had,
virtual event product. Yeah, right.
yeah, so we had already built sort of the more complex version of it. We just had to simplify it. But then it was also around the time when the Gen AI wave
Ah,
had
yes.
started to grow. And
Yes.
we said, okay, let's take advantage of that. Let's put in a bunch of differentiators that no one in the market is talking about, content repurposing and all of those
Yes.
pieces. Because I realized quickly as I was talking to, I maybe spoke to like 50 marketing folks, just trying to understand if this is the right bet for us. And it was clear that they were not going to move away from their current provider unless you really provided something that was worth moving
Yes.
away for, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so that is what we were really focused on, that hey, the base product is in place, let's put in a bunch of additional things that will really excite prospects, and then reorient our GTM around it, because the customer
Yeah.
type itself was very different, the ones that were doing virtual events to the ones who were doing webinars. So we had to just
Okay.
redo our entire GTM, which took much longer
Oh,
than
of
what I
course.
expected.
Yeah.
But those were the sort of real challenges on the ground in order to make that shift happen.
Okay. So is this 2022 and 3 that this shift happened, something like
Yes.
that? The
Yes.
post-COVID turn
Mhm.
and
Correct.
all of that? And are there any investors on the cap table anymore? Are they just cleared out and, now it's
Yeah.
just the owners and you and the employees, you
Right.
know?
Right. Yeah. The investors cleared out at that point, and yeah, it was just the employees and the founders later on.
Okay. And this is mostly an India-based team and maybe even mostly in Bangalore these days. How many employees do you have or did you have in the US?
Yeah, I mean, at our peak, we had a couple of hundred employees,
Okay.
and a large marketing and GTM organization in the US. But over the years, as things changed, we kind of, whittled it down to a small team of about 20-25 people. Yeah, half of them in Bangalore, the other half spread across India, and everything
Okay.
was run out of the Bangalore
So did you
location.
have any US employees in the recent era?
Not in the last
Okay.
24 months. Yeah.
And were you selling to Indian or let's say non-US customers, or most of your business was in the US,
Yeah.
selling and building and doing everything from India?
Correct. Yeah. Our primary
Yeah.
focus was for EMEA and US,
Okay.
right?
Europe.
And the reason for that is, especially in our market, there are options like you could go have a Zoom webinar, and you really need to look at the paying capacity or the willingness to pay of
Yeah.
companies for extra features and better webinars and so on. And we just felt, while we do have India customers, some of the more forward-looking ones did use our products, but the primary driver to do differentiated stuff, I think we still see that in the US and Europe.
Okay. So later this year, 2025 here, what percentage of your business did you get to with webinars and the virtual events that was kind of fading away?
Yeah,
Customers were still using the previous platform, legacy platform, whatever you call it. What
yeah,
percentage did you get up to with webinars, the growth
yeah.
part of your business?
I think by the end of it, We were sort of 50-50, where 50% was still from the legacy and 50%
Yeah.
was from the new product. And that ratio obviously changed over time. Earlier, it was like 100-0, then, slowly kind of get to 80-20. And then, yeah, I mean, revenue in a crowded market, when you
Oh
have to
my gosh.
displace competitors, yeah,
Right.
it takes time because you need to like convince people in order to move away, and especially marketing tools that are integrated in the systems already. Marketers are always like scrambling for bandwidth. I think marketing functions as a whole have undergone a sea change in the last 2 to 3 years, and they've been asked to do more with less.
Yeah,
So
of
people
course.
just don't want to change, they just want to make sure everything's as is.
Right.
So you really need to have like a very strong proposition for them to change.
Well, this is one of the most competitive markets. You've got people giving it away for free on the bottom end there for small businesses
Yeah,
and big companies that have very entrenched, product lines and salespeople, and people don't want to change, and
yeah.
marketing departments changing, the way companies market is changing, and all of this. You got a little traction with your webinar product. Did you just do the calculation, which is, gosh, in order for us to make a big business here, it's going to be really, really hard. We're a little player in
Yeah.
this big ocean. Or, how did you think about that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think when the founders made the decision to return the capital, one of the reasons was we knew the pivot, while it may work, it's probably not going to get us to 100 million anytime
Uh,
soon. And the founders were very clear that they wanted to create like a massive company. And if that was not possible, we might as well figure out a different way. So that was very clear. And that's why we felt, okay, let's get it to a certain point where an exit looks more feasible, which means we just cut out the burn as much as possible, continue to grow the webinar product, continue to keep our people together. And then, if everything works well, we find the right buyer. So that was pretty clear from the outset. And we just changed our goalpost. Yeah, when we
yeah.
decided that.
It's so simple to change goalposts, right? It sounds you've got to, your steady voice here, your reasoned
Yeah.
logic and so forth. But I'm sure this was a crazy adventure, right? COVID happening, 150 million, getting to 200 people, changing your mind, returning capital, going down. I've been through that in the dot-com era. It's
Yeah.
really heavy. What was the hardest part for you personally, stepping in as CEO and getting through this? It's a lot of weight, a lot of
Yeah.
change, a lot of big moves. What was the
it,
hardest
it
thing for you?
It might sound odd, but I would say I found the first couple of years harder when I was the head of product
Oh,
because of the chaotic nature of the market, or the speed at which
yes.
we were going and the speed at which we were growing. I think I was
There's a
not used
practical
to
founder talking to you right
that.
there, that
And
just looked insane. Yeah,
it did. I mean, it was fun, but if I just have to compare the two experiences, I think mentally I was in a better place in the second half, though
right.
that would have been like very scary for people. But I just felt things were more in control. We knew what the outcome we were chasing. And I had, after discussions with WebHub and some of the team members, we had come up with a set of steps. Hey, look, if we did these 4 or 5 things well, then we're going to be in a good place, right?
Yeah.
So I thought the second half, while challenging, was just made me feel more at ease than the first half. And in the second half, the challenge really is people's expectations, because you're coming
Ah,
from a company that's like raised so much. There's very high
yeah.
expectations of what that outcome is going to be.
Is that employees that came initially, with the big
Yeah,
dream?
yeah, correct. And everyone, like all of us put together, right? I mean, we had certain
Yeah.
expectations of what that outcome is going to be, and when that doesn't happen, reality bites, and you have to
Yeah.
really quickly turn around, like mentally, just switch to a different type of mindset. That was hard. I think it was hard for everyone and me. just keeping people together. A few of them just felt, okay, this is not for me, I'm going to move. And I always tell people, look, all of us have had that choice. When something's not going your way, as an employee, you always have a choice to just move and figure out a different opportunity. But I saw it slightly differently. I thought that was an opportunity for me personally to see, to hang around, to just hang around and see if I can make a difference. And that's what I told
Yeah.
people. See if you can hang around and make a difference, because you will learn something from that experience, as opposed to going to a place where everything is set. You just got to go execute. Here, you
I
need to
know.
figure things out from scratch
That looks
again.
like jail to all of us, and maybe, when this settles in BrandLive, it'll look like I gotta go back and do the adventure again, Shailesh.
Maybe, but that was my thought process. That okay,
Yeah,
here's a challenge. Let's figure out a way, and you can always, like, one can always get another role somewhere if you wanted to.
right.
But I just told myself that not going to jump ship, so to speak, and just try to get things back on track. And for me personally, it was a great opportunity to just deep dive into sales, marketing, customer success. I think being a product person, you're already somewhat there, but
Uh-huh.
being the CEO, you're looking at everything very, very closely, and that's why I enjoyed that role more, because I could
Yeah.
just see where something is wrong, and I could
Yeah.
go fix that part,
Yes.
and then I
Right.
can,
The product
just
manager gets
move
to steer the ship finally, and say, "Just go
Yeah,
that way and just
yeah,
change that thing and
yeah,
just,
yeah, yeah,
stop
yeah.
doing that." So,
Correct,
what
correct.
was the
So
biggest pivot in there besides the webinar? Was it of going from virtual event platform to, a powerful webinar platform? What other strategic, shifts, had to be made? So
yeah,
your ICP change or your whole sales motion, presumably, but what other shifts did you have to get through?
yeah. The biggest shift was in the ICP, apart from the product
Mm.
change.
Yeah.
And the shift was because you were selling to customers who would organize events as a livelihood, like the big
Uh-huh.
IMXs of the day. And now you're
Uh-huh.
shifting over your ICP to a classical B2B marketing team,
Oh,
where
wow.
webinars are like one of the wheels of the demand gen engine. And that's a massive shift. So your positioning, you got to go figure out, okay, what pain points are they having with their current webinar providers. So
Yeah.
it was just like a extremely research oriented exercise that we had to do, and very methodical in how we go after that market. So that GTM shift, like I mentioned earlier, took a lot longer than I
Yeah.
expected to take. The sales motion, not so much. I think
Yeah.
we had some experienced sales folks who had been battle tested by doing multiple demos in a day during the virtual event days, and they just had to shift their value
Yeah.
proposition and just the techniques a little bit, but they were already pretty solid in terms of how to showcase a product. And especially
Yeah.
when you want to displace a competitor, you need to know what the weaknesses are. So product wise, they were very, very knowledgeable,
Uh,
and they use that knowledge in order to get us good win rates.
we had a lot of conversations about this in the summer. So tell us how you did a research, right? As you're steering the ship and, getting a signal, what were the things that gave you enough signal to give you confidence? Should we go this way or that way? Were you talking to customers? Were you looking at data? Were you doing competitive analysis? Were you going with your gut? What were you doing when you say research?
Yeah, I guess given where we were in terms of the product that we had, we could have made two types of choices. One choice was move into the webinar space, which is what we eventually did. The other choice was to become a full-fledged events platform, meaning support in-person events and hybrid events
Right.
also. And based on our past experience and the founders' past experience with physical events, we just felt that a repeatable product over there may not be that feasible, because these large customers want you to customize the product for their use
Yes.
case. So it becomes
Right.
the typical enterprise motion.
Right.
And we just
Yes.
felt that was not necessarily repeatable. In hindsight, maybe the ACV would have been higher over there, but wouldn't have been repeatable like the webinar business was.
Yeah.
And then because I was not very familiar with the webinar market, I spoke to almost, I think, 50 like marketing leaders, hired an agency to get me in touch with them. That was maybe it took me 4 weeks of like 4 or 5
Interviews.
calls every day to kind of just get a sense of should we go there or not. And my vote was more for like the webinar business because of the repeatability. And I could clearly see a gap in the existing providers over
Okay.
there. And we felt that if we are able to displace one and then more and more and more, we just needed to get to like a smaller $1 million revenue mark for us to
Right.
be in a safe zone, right? And I thought that was
Right.
very doable over a 2 year period.
Okay. Yeah. The refounder, restartup, turnaround there. Crazy times there. The go-to-market change, right? We have people, we have code, we have product, we have, a market that we live in, but pretty quickly it gets back to, can you acquire new customers efficiently, right? That
Yeah.
stay and pay, that they're scalable. They're not just survival customers, they're scalable customers. Those, good stuff. What was the motion that you had? Was it sales outbound? Was it marketing inbound, or the both? And
Yeah.
what was your technique for
Yeah.
growing?
Yeah. I guess it was a mix of everything until we found
Okay.
out where to double down and what started working for us.
Right.
I think we quickly realized that we need to have a good presence on the web because we had absolutely no content in terms of SEO friendly content on webinars. It was all about events, and
Yeah.
the company or the marketing team had done a great job in creating that SEO presence for events. But now we just wanted that perception to change and say that, hey, no, here's a platform that where you can do webinars also. So we used a company that would generate, and this was around the AI boom time. So we used companies that would create lots of content for us on topics much faster
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
just giving it to humans. So that helped us a lot.
Oh,
In
okay.
fact, we started featuring on ChatGPT searches way
Yeah.
way earlier than we than we expected. So that started working well. LinkedIn thought leadership ads started working well. One of the things that I like to do was just write, and I
Yeah.
because I was in the midst of all that customer research, I created like an entire framework of writing about customers, about their problems, about our products and features, about our competitors, taking bets that our prospects would see those ads and then come and take a demo.
Right.
While the team was not able to really translate my LinkedIn posts to pipeline, but they told me that we are pretty confident it is coming, like a bunch of pipeline is coming through that.
Yeah.
We did experiment with Google Ads, but I realized that if you're not doing those well, it's a money
Well, you're
sink.
a very competitive market. You'll get,
Yeah, yeah.
eaten up, and the costs will go up because the big enterprise guys can make $1 million when they sell a platform.
So
So,
then we really cut down the budget over there and we started doing smaller experiments, and only when we saw success did we put in more money. But the LinkedIn ads piece I think started working much better for us. The outbound I don't think was successful for us.
yeah.
Again, coming from a team or marketers who don't want to change their platform unless they see a need, you can't like go outbound and force them to do that. I think it worked
Right.
in bits and pieces, but overall, I don't think that was like very, very successful for us. But
Yeah.
yeah, everything kind of came together, and we started seeing pipeline grow relative to the amount of money we were spending 6 months ago. So those ratios started changing really well.
Yeah.
Kudos to like the marketing lead who came in
Yeah.
at that point in time. And then yeah, our win rates were always very healthy, but they got better as we added more products to our suite, we added more features, and we
Yeah.
were just having like a pretty strong proposition overall.
Great. Okay, so at the same time, you shift the product, you shift your organization, you shift your go-to-market motion. You were also thinking about who could buy this. Is
Yeah.
it a big competitor that wants a modern platform? Is it a small one? Is it this?
Yeah.
How did you go about the M&A thinking amongst all the other things you were doing?
I think first I spoke to a bunch of people, including you, at that point about okay, how does one go about it? Because I was very
Yes,
new
right,
to it,
yeah.
and sort of the summarized advice that I got was like talk to lots of people, both direct companies who could buy you, but also intermediaries, and see what they have to say about where the business is and what does a buy for them really look like. So really
Mhm,
put on the hat of the buyer and see what
mhm,
are the numbers do they care about, how do they establish fitment within their
yeah.
business. So based on that, I had a couple of
As a
options.
customer, it's not like an
Yeah,
ideal, buyer
yeah,
profile, that kind of
exactly.
thing.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
do
yeah,
they want? What are they
yeah.
reaching for? Yeah,
Yeah.
all
And
that.
I think that came up with like two or three choices. One was like a strategic buy where a larger competitor looks at
Yeah.
you and says that, okay, these guys complement my product suit well. It could also be like an orthogonal provider, like a meetings company that would
Eh,
say, okay, now let's expand our product portfolio and add webinars to it, events to it.
right.
That,
Wants to
that
get in
could have been
digital,
the
yeah.
other type. It could also be like a PE firm who is cobbling together a bunch of smaller SaaS companies and trying to create like a larger business out of it and
Mhm,
creating efficiencies over there. So there were a few options on the
yeah,
table. And I think it helped me personally to kind of talk directly to potential buyers and also
yeah.
to investment banks and the
So you
intermediate.
got on the phone and you started talking to
Yeah.
people, "Hey, is this interesting to you?" And we talked about a couple, scripts and questions and conversations to ask, how do you have that conversation, just like your customer conversations, prospect conversations.
Yeah.
Did you eventually hire a banker or did you, generate the, deal flow yourself?
Yeah, eventually we did not end up hiring a banker.
Oh,
It was
really?
a
Okay.
direct conversation. I think
Did that come from you reaching out and saying, "Is this interesting? I just wanna have a conversation?"
I think there were multiple conversations happening. The founders knew each other. So I think there was probably
Oh,
like a chat
okay.
happening around that. And I was actively looking at things as well. So it all kind of came together at that point. Yeah.
Okay. And so conversation happened, "Hey, are you interested?" "Yes, we're interested." "We're kind of interested too." How long did that process go for?
Yeah, it took a few months. I think it would have taken us 4 to 5 months overall, which is
Yeah.
considering everything, it's kind of a short period itself.
Yeah, it's pretty short. Yeah.
I've heard of acquisitions that go
Yeah.
on for a lot longer
Yeah.
than that. But I guess there was a excuse me, certain sense of familiarity with the business, the use cases and all of that. So there was like this nice match in terms of the products and the revenue that would come in. And I think there was a clear path in Sam's mind, BrandLive CEO, of how he could kind of maximize what Hubilo has for the BrandLive business. So I think that was
I
pretty
see.
clear for him. And then eventually, yeah, things went towards okay, let's kind of do this for good now.
What can you say about the deal? It wasn't like $1 billion deal or whatever, but was it like an acqui-hire? Was it a cover your bet? Did you everybody make a little money here? Or, was it a good deal or cash deal? What can you say?
Yeah, I think overall, all things put together, it was a decent outcome for everyone involved. And one of my priorities was that there is continuity for our team going
Yes.
forward. And the Brandlight team also saw a need for, engineers, and there's a certain advantage being in India as well instead of
Yes.
hiring
Uh-huh.
in a different place. So all those factors played a part, and I would say about 80% of the team has been hired as well.
Yeah.
And on the customer side,
Meaning they were part of the transition, right?
yeah,
They were just part of it. Yes.
they're all part of the
Yeah.
transition. And on the customers front, there's not like no changes as such. They continue
Yeah.
to get like the same level of service. Our customer success team is actually very well appreciated by our customers, so they didn't want any of that to change. So we wanted to make sure they have continuity. And overall, yeah, it was a decent exit. I can't share like more details on that.
Okay. Yeah.
But all said and done, the point at which we had decided, okay, we're going to return funds and we're going to go into a bootstrap mode, and let's try to hit a certain number. and then maybe we'll get a certain exit. I don't think we hit those numbers, but all said and done, we are still pretty happy with the
Pretty
outcome.
good, yeah.
So I think that's good.
So you went from listening to this podcast to being on it, right? In the 6-month period after our conversations and everything, and a little success story here. Um, what was the hardest part of that, the deal, the due diligence or the negotiation or you're in transition right now, which is never easy, but like,
Yeah.
what is the heaviest lift that surprised you?
Yeah, yeah. I think the hardest piece or the most intense, let me put it that way, was just the back and forth that both the teams had on. Okay, here's customers, here's the revenue, here are the vendors that we have. So just to figure out what's going to be the assets
Uh,
and what's going to be the liabilities, and not just that internally. I guess when you go through a process like this, if you hire someone to do it for you, they'll set up the data room, they'll set up all of those things,
yeah.
but
All
you
right.
had to do that all in house. My team was great in helping me out, but that was an intense period
So you
of.
had to do all that.
Yeah,
M&A advisors do plenty of help to help
yeah.
you organize and tell the
Yeah.
story and get your data together and get the right data there, tell the financial story and everything
Yeah.
else. And you had to do all that
Yeah.
yourself.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So that I think was the toughest part, but it also helped me understand, like, okay, this is how it's done, and I think that
There you
also
go.
gave me ideas of, okay, this process seems a bit inefficient. Why hasn't solved someone solved that
Yeah.
problem? So maybe there's
Yeah. There
something
you
there.
go.
And yeah, I mean, just going through that process of reviewing our own customer contracts, vendor contracts, looking at
Oh,
all our
yeah. Everything.
expenses and everything. You also need to prepare for how to move vendors over to the new company, how to merge accounts. It's a lot of logistical, like boring
Yes.
work, frankly, but it's stuff that's got to be done. And yeah, that was an intense period where a lot of negotiation and reviews of contracts were happening.
Why didn't you hire an M&A advisor? And not all founders do, but most of the founders who've sold on this podcast hired an M&A advisors and they said it was got us a better deal. They really helped us in the process. They helped with therapy because it's an insane time. They helped us with the financials. They helped with the negotiations and all that. But was it just that the deal size wasn't big enough to support that? Or you kind of had somebody, you were at the table with somebody and you didn't want to bring in another M&A advisor? Why didn't you,
Yeah.
eventually hire an M&A advisor?
Yeah. I'd say that I did speak to a few and I could
Mhm.
see the value that they would bring in. But I think at some point, like Vaibhav and I decided, let's just do this ourselves.
Yeah.
And maybe I didn't know the intense amount of work that was there. But all said and done, I'm not sure if in this scenario we would have gotten like a bigger outcome
Yeah.
having an advisor, but it would have certainly helped in just organizing yourself in
Yes.
order to present data, in order to make sure, okay, these are the things that you need to do. And yeah, I found myself scrambling a couple of late nights putting things together, but yeah, in hindsight, I think an M&A advisor would have been helpful.
Yeah.
um, Also, if you are looking at like a longer time frame, having that M&A advisor in our mind, like sometimes they take a retainer, and that's
Yeah.
going to impact my P&L. So I was almost
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
of
No,
every
I get it.
dollar at that point. If it was a shorter time period, maybe that was useful. But I think we had like multiple months, and it was not really clear when it's going to happen and things like that. So we just felt a bit not so comfortable having a retainer based advisor role for like multiple months.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for sharing that. What is your vision for what you after Hubilo? You play this out, shorter, longer, whatever it is. You
Mhm.
get to decide. But 3 to 5 years from now, are you officially a practical software CEO in the AI, world, and you'll go start something, or you won't go back to a big company in, engineering or product, but, I know maybe the funded thing appealed to you, or what do you think you're going to be doing in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. I hope I'm running my own company in 3 to 5 years.
There you go.
And
Great.
that's what I really, really intend to do. And
That's a nice way of saying, Shailesh, there's no other thing you can do at this point. You probably can't force yourself to raise big funding, and you can't go to work for people anymore, right? You've owned the steering wheel, you've bought your independence,
yeah.
that kind of thing. So,
Um, yeah, I mean, let's see. This outcome gives me a little bit of flexibility, but at the
yes,
same
good for
time,
you.
the market. I mean, I guess it goes down to will I be able to find a viable problem that people are willing to pay for, and will I be able to use sort of all of this experience that I have in order to solve it really well and kick off a company off the ground. So
Right.
something that I'm
I
motivated
predict
to
you
do.
will, right? You'll find something, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You're astute right
We'll
there.
we'll find out soon enough. So that's something that I'm really motivated to do because I feel I've
Yeah,
put that off for quite some time,
yeah.
and now is probably the best time to start a company where there's
Yes.
so much action, there's so much
Oh my
happening,
gosh.
and it's
Yes.
super exciting to be in this space. It's also a great time to not have like revenue pressure on your shoulders, and just think out loud, have open conversations, and just be free before you really dive choose an area and then dive into it. I think the same
Yeah,
types of
I
pressures
agree with
will
that.
come back as
Yeah,
you start a company, but now is a
yeah.
great time to just help with transition, make sure the team is good, but at the same time, start thinking about the types of problems I want to solve in the future.
Well, thanks for sharing that story. It's an amazing story.
Thank you.
Crazy and then practical. Practical founder means reasonably crazy. So there's a reasonable side to this that, yeah, but you had
Yeah,
a pretty big year this year.
yeah,
Lots going
absolutely.
on, lots could have gone worse, all this kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
Shailesh, what is your advice for founders and Bangalore that are or people that want to quit their day job? They've been in tech, they've been in product, they've been in and they see an opportunity and they say, well, you left the tech group and you
Mhm.
eventually run a company now. What advice do you give most often to practical founders that or impractical ones? There's still a place for VC funding in the world.
Mhm.
It can work, not very often, but what do you tell them most often based on your recent experiences?
Yeah, I just had a coffee conversation yesterday with like a very smart engineer who's now on the
Yeah,
crossroads of, okay, do I want to start my own thing? Do I want to become a
yeah,
PM? I guess I just tell them, depending on their situation, what do they want to optimize for? If they want to optimize for
yeah.
learning, then starting your own company or joining an early stage startup, those are great ways to do it. And if you're financially in a good place, might as well do the founder piece because that's gonna
Uh-huh.
like accelerate your learning like anything, especially after you've worked for 10 years as an engineer and you've made like
Yeah,
a decent savings. If
yeah,
you're fresh out, I think I've met lots of young people in their early 20s who've got great energy and they have that risk taking appetite. I don't know if I can teach them anything because they're just like, they're great in what they do. And for me, it's more about, okay, what can I learn from them? Because they're so good with execution. They're extremely courageous in taking these bets. Maybe the advice I give them is talk to people. Engineers have a tendency to go build stuff first, but you got to
yes.
talk to
I've heard
people
that. A lot of
and
Indian entrepreneurs start with a big product.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So just reading books like the Mom Test, and just
Yes.
understanding how to talk to prospects, customers, people. That's something I feel has been like a big learning for me over the years as well.
Yeah.
So for the early excitable founders, I tell them that. For slightly older but want to be founders, I tell them, okay, like optimize for learning or for wealth creation, you decide. And ultimately, I think I'm going to be moving into that journey also. And
Uh-huh.
what I tell myself is, let me find those problems which not too many people are solving, but people want it solved. They're willing to pay money for it. It comes down to like the absolute basics. But I guess getting to that takes time.
Yeah.
Finding those people for those potential
Yeah.
customers takes time. So it's a lot of exploration across various customer segments, across
Yeah.
industries, before you can find something that's fit for you.
And the other side of that fit is now you know what you're really good at and what you don't like, right?
Yeah.
To do what, and so, and what kind of opportunity is right for you? Do you like enterprise opportunities? I don't, right? Do you like small business? Do you like global? Do you like, business side or technical side? There's all kinds of ways to play the game. And the practical founder magic is finding what you love, the problem you love that you want to attach yourself to, and the people you care about. That's why I'm here, and so forth, and where you can apply your unusual superpowers because you're
Mhm.
old enough to know what is really
Yeah.
amazing about what you've done, and you've applied them here. So, Shailesh, I really appreciate you sharing your story
Yeah.
of Hubilo 1.0, 2.0, and Shailesh 3.0, right? So we'll see where you go
Yeah.
from here. Really
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing your story
No,
on the podcast.
thank you. Thank you so much, Greg. And our early conversations were super helpful, and I've always appreciated having that chat. And yeah, I didn't think I would be on the podcast, but this is awesome, and
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that people find this helpful.
Awesome. Thanks, Shailesh.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this week's interview on the Practical Founders podcast. Be sure to like this episode and subscribe to the Practical Founders YouTube channel to keep up with my weekly in-depth interviews with serious software founders who are building valuable software companies without big funding. You can check out my blog, all the podcast episodes, and information about my Practical Founders CEO peer groups at practicalfounders.com, or message me on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect. See you next week.